Hello, everybody. Welcome to TAM Integration's monthly community meeting. I am your host. I'm the founder of TAM Integration, Daniel Shankin. I'm glad you're here. It is Monday, July 15, 2024 for Maggie. And today we're going to be talking about shadow integration for intimacy and connection with my dear old friend, Zat Baraka. Met originally, did we meet first at Yoga on Main or at Bhakti Fest?
No, we met through my partner.
Right, at Bhakti Fest.
Right, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So Zat is a dedicated student and teacher of Relational Inner Work, founder of Men's Wisdom Work, the Men's Coach Training, and the New Masculine Program. His grounded approach incorporates his mastery of shadow work, embodiment practices, breath and yogic application, and relational leadership practices. With 29 years of training, including tantric Buddhist practice and a master's in spiritual psychology, Zat has been a key figure in the men's growth movement for nearly 3 decades. He actively engages in his own inner work, ensuring he can lead clients to profound depths. Zat has impacted thousands of men worldwide with his innovative style of personal and spiritual work. He lives with his wife and son in Southern California. It's great to have you here. Thank you.
Yeah, man. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Why don't I pin us for a moment so that pin, add pin. Cool. Yeah, it's good to reconnect with you a couple of months ago. We hadn't talked in quite some time, and it is interesting how big life changes kind of bring people back together again.
Sure does.
And
Yeah.
well, I'm glad we're making the most of it in this moment.
Yeah. Sad moment, but
Yeah.
here we are. Yeah.
So, and I'm grateful, we brought this idea came up of you talking to my folks, and it actually happened, and that's a miracle, in these days and times. But I've always known you to be the kind of guy who makes stuff happen. So I'm not really that surprised. And I love the topic you suggested, shadow integration for intimacy and connection. I think a lot of our community is familiar with shadow work, at least for personal growth work and, to some degree of relational work. But I really like that we are bringing the two together in an intimate way. To get started, I was wondering if you could give us kind of like an explicit definition of the shadow. We probably all have a general idea, but it's good to have a shared definition.
Yeah. Shadow, based on, of course, our favorite psychologist, Jung, is the hidden, unseen, repressed aspects of ourself that quietly lurk in the shadows and affect all of our thoughts, actions, feelings, all of our concepts, conditioning, ideas, the way we relate to reality. And so many different metaphors or analogies for how shadow is formed. The one I always go to is one I learned first, which I love, is the idea of the long bag we drag behind us. And that comes through the Robert Bly camp. And that is, we're born as, whole, complete beings, as it might be said in the Buddhist tradition. We're all born with our Buddha nature and inherent goodness and inherent wisdom. And through no intention of our parents or our primary caregivers, we slowly, through being told what to do, through being told to, be quiet, shut up, don't cry, don't be a baby, through inadvertent experiences as well, like, you not being invited into your brother's room because they're the older brothers, being left out, and thus forming a belief about yourself creates a shadow imprint. So we could say that we're born into these full shiny, expressive, whole aspect as a being. And if we look at the foundation of, like we'll say through the lens of Stan Tatkin and relational intimacy, if we have the two core pieces of secure functioning in any relationship, that especially as a baby, we need these core pieces. One is to have good attachment, right? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is to be able to express ourselves. So secure attachment means like we're being fed, our diapers being changed, we're being taken care of. And then the need to express ourselves if we poop, if we're hungry. And so if that gets in any way, ignored, let's say you cry a little longer than necessary, or when you're 5 years old, if you cry a little longer than necessary and your needs are not met, we put a part of ourself away in the bag, right? So we're in the living room with our family and you're talking about, mom and dad are talking about where you're going to dinner, and you're like, oh, I know where I want to go. Like, hey, shut up. Your parents are talking about this. So seemingly innocuous little event, but that part of yourself that's expressive and free and open and creative then gets diminished, right? And so we put our expressive voice away in the bag. And as that happens through life, through being whatever, abandoned, being ignored, especially in the harshness of junior high and high school, people name calling you not being in the in crowd, you not being as popular on social media, those beautiful aspects of ourself start getting put away in the bag. And the bag gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And at some point, you don't even know that you're carrying it, right? And so maybe you were born in a family where if you had any expression of anger, that was instantly stopped. That's not acceptable in this house, young man. We do not yell at anyone. There's no yelling or anger in this house, right? So anger, not an unhealthy, aggressive, in its unhealthy, aggressive state, but to get your needs met, sometimes you need to bring more energy, and that can be construed as anger. So now you've just put anger in the bag. And so that part of your expression is now a shadow aspect of you. It's in the shadows, so that later in life, when you see that aspect of your repressed parts of you that are in the bag, your anger, your shiny, expressive, beautiful, loving, creative self, outside, maybe in someone else, for example, we push back against that. So for me, for example, I was raised by a loud, angry father, a lot of aggression, fighting in the house. And so when I got older, anytime I was around someone loud or pushy, I would immediately judge them as being, what an ass, what an idiot. Like, look at that person. Look how loud and pushy and obnoxious they are. And then when I would see that aspect of myself, it was too painful to recognize. Or if I did recognize it, then what can happen is we can go into a sort of, hyper self-critical state. And that's where we go into like depression, self-aggression, we could call it, right? So it either, those repressed aspects of ourselves either get projected outward and seen on the external mirror of our life, or we see them on ourselves and they're too painful to address. So we might just berate ourselves, or we might distract or do drugs or porn or whatever it is, or the way to distract. And so, again, those shadow aspects are those hidden, unseen aspects of ourselves that we put in the bag, that we've hidden, that are no longer safe to be addressed because we've deemed them as unhealthy, unworthy, unacceptable. So that's kind of our baseline. And the nice quote that I love around that is that the world is my mirror. I am what I passionately judge others to be.
Mm.
So the world is my mirror. I am what I passionately judge. So if you want to know what your shadow is, if you want to know what some of your shadows are, simply look at your judgment of another. That points directly to a shadow aspect of yourself. So I intellectually, when I first learned about this, I intellectually understood what it meant, that every angry, pissed off, or arrogant or resentful judgment about the outside world, or, about the world outside myself and anyone in it, only points to something in me that perfectly mirrors that external thing I'm so upset about. So there's that constant reflection in the outside world of that thing inside of me that mirrors that. So
Yeah.
that's a good baseline to start with for
Wow.
shadow is.
Yeah. Um, I'm gonna just ask if people who are listening, if listening to Zot say all that made your bag ache, just drop a bag emoji in the chat because I felt mine. I felt mine
Yeah,
as you were describing it. And I like the thing about the reflection. And while we're on Jung, the quote that popped into my head was, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you'll call it fate. Can
right.
you speak to like how the self that we keep in the bag is actually in a lot of ways perhaps calling the shots and directing our life?
Yeah, so if we want to link another body of work that I love, which is Harville Hendricks' work, which is classic book, Getting the Love You Want, and looking at our unmet needs. And so if we look at our parents or our primary caretakers at our early life, and we look at our needs that were not met, right? So the thing that I needed most from you. So everyone take a moment. You can think about this. Just let's try a quick exercise. Maybe just close your eyes for a second, take a breath, and just think back to your early childhood home, your primary caregivers, whether you call those parents or grandparents or uncle, whoever it was, and think about the ways that they got upset, the ways that they got angry or ignored you or avoided you. Just think of the ways that they acted that were in which they were perturbed or bothered. Think about that for a moment, and then let the answer to this come. What I needed most from you as a child, but didn't get enough of was, so think about that. What I needed most from you as a child, but didn't get enough of was, and let those answers come. It may be your undivided attentions, your presence, your loving, safety, connection, the freedom to express myself, the freedom to be wild and run wild, to snuggle with you, to physical affection. I didn't get enough of that. So maybe you write those down, write a couple of those things down, just so you have them. So those we can call our unmet needs. And our unmet needs is our nervous system's home base. That's the place that we are entrained to go back to over and over. That's our home base. Hate to break it to you. It's what I've learned. It's what I've heard. It's what I've experienced. That is the home base of our nervous system where we, even with years and years and years, me with over 30 years of personal growth work on the path, it's still where I go. And you will always go there. But that's not to say that you cannot shift, change your reaction. You can digest the tensions around it. You can shift your relationship to it, and hence the idea of integrating shadow. And so those unmet needs directly point to our shadow aspects, right? So if for me, I didn't feel welcomed in my home because my dad was always yelling. So I would just go in my side yard and play with my dog. I felt welcome there. So that lack of feeling welcomed, I put that open heart, that kind of open, loving, welcoming aspect of myself away in the bag, because I would have to be in the house and have protection mechanisms on, in case my dad would scream at me. And so that became a shadow, that open-hearted, loving, even in group situations when I go out to family gatherings and things, it triggers. And as soon as I walk into a room with a lot of people, it gets triggered. And I watch it and I see how that happens. So that intersects with the needs that were not met, this feeling of being welcomed or having the loving presence of my father. And so if that's the home base that I go to over and over, I can come home from whatever, being out for the day, running errands. And I come home and my wife's running around doing her thing. She's busy. I don't know what just happened for her, but she doesn't welcome me in the way that I need to be welcomed. And so then I get triggered internally. If I don't pick up on it, I'll just go right to the internal voice, the dialogue, like, oh, there it is again. See, yep. because we're always looking for proof of the beliefs that we carry about ourselves in life, right? And so if I don't consciously address it with her or consciously address it in myself, then I will have a reaction. I may shut down, I may get quiet, I may make a snide remark, I may go off into the other room by myself. And if I'm not watchful of that, so it becomes the filter through how we see the world, right? The needs that are not being met. And then the funny part about that too, that I always teach, is that even if that need is met, oftentimes because of our nervous system's home base, we won't recognize, we won't feel it, we won't accept it, we won't be satiated by it. And so hence the idea of like, taking care of ourselves, self-love, self-caring, fulfilling our own needs, not to say that our partner shouldn't, but that is a key part. And especially in men's work, why it's so powerful is for men who are really looking to create more attraction in their partnerships, is to have this sense of sovereignty in themselves, that not that they don't deserve to have their needs met by their partner, but if you can begin there, and if your partner is still not bringing you, what you desire, then you can have a conversation about it. But so I'll use that idea in of our unmet needs and how they intersect with our shadow, and how they influence our relational life.
I literally told Somya that I needed more of the thing that came up in the meditation today.
What was that?
Freedom and spaciousness,
Mm,
which again is in a reactive way, it just runs. But in a conscious way, it meditates. It walks in the woods.
right.
So it's like there's unconscious reactive ways to get those needs met, and then there's like self-care conscious ways to get those needs met, that'll actually, instead of like feeding the misapprehension, will kind of heal it and create kind of more connection.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful.
So that
I'm just curious if anyone had a strong thing come through for them. I was just curious if anyone had a clear answer to that childhood meandering.
well, that's great. And feel free to either type it in or unmute yourself.
I've unmuted in Australia, and mine is clear as a bell that I'm not allowed to have messy feelings. Messy feelings are too messy in my, since childhood. So that record, I thought I was really aware as a, practitioner in medicine of others' feelings, which I am, in practice I was when I practiced. But for myself, I had to pull over on the road. I'm traveling and just stop, because it just struck me how much that lives within me, in my nervous system. And I know how to treat it.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, please.
So what is the thing that you needed most that you didn't get enough of? What is
to be allowed to have messy feelings, that they too are welcome.
So even if we took off the judgment of feelings being messy, what I'm hearing is what you needed most was the freedom to express your emotions.
Yes, that's it in a caption. Thank you. I'll write that right now.
And underneath that, what I hear and what I generally see is safety to express myself, because you didn't feel safe.
No, yeah. Oh, I feel like crying when you say that.
Yeah.
I feel like bursting into tears. Yeah. To be safe to do that. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I have to pull over.
And so then here's the rub. Here's the rub, and it's written and it's through many traditions talk about this. David Data talks about this. Connie Zawig, great shadow worker, talks about this. Many relational therapists talk about this, and that is we always attract our reciprocal, right? And so and based on the Imago work of Harville Hendricks, you're going to attract the image of your parental relationship and in a partner. And so our work is then to heal that. And so the idea is in your relationship with your partner, that when they are not creating that safety for you, that hopefully one is in a conscious relationship where you can say, hey, I have this ongoing challenge around not feeling safe to express myself. And so I want you to pick up on those cues, or I might say to you, hey, I don't feel safe right now. Can you help me in those moments? And your partner hopefully would go, totally, babe. Yeah, I'm there. Let's do that. And so then,
Well, I have stayed away from relationship for over 13, 14 years, and I've
okay.
rarely had one. And as a medical astrologer, I have a seventh house, which is the other. So it's one's own other self met through other people is in Aquarius, and they're always split off in, and it's my seventh house. I know that. But integrating it is a lifelong, you know, challenge and story. And it has, as the planets go round and hit again, like Saturn's there coming up for the, I'm 65. So I've had a couple of hits of it. And when I go back, over these years and retrace that story, the task is being kind to myself internally, and integrating that eccentric way out there, which I've always been seen as, but not as much as the others, and just challenging myself in that Aquarian way to continue being different and stepping, to this, not to the norm. It's very hard when you're born a Capricorn.
I get it.
I'm born a Capricorn, so it's
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you for the feedback. It's excellent. I have a lot for the next 600 Ks to think about. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Yeah.
Very, very cool. Thank you. There's a couple of people who typed in love and attention, validation. When I perceive I'm being criticized, I get triggered. Relatable. Structure, order, reliability are my unmet needs. Not feeling safe enough to express how sensitive I really am, versus, and in reaction, resemble what a male growing up in the 80s should. And I'm going to do this. This is my archetypal hand signals for what a man should act like. Very beautiful. Does anybody feel like sharing about it verbally? Talking to Zat about it for a moment? Well, cool. Definitely goes right to it, man. Goes right to it in about in a 2-minute practice. It's nice.
Yeah, it really does. Where should we go next, Daniel?
Well, go
Well,
ahead if you just want more dynamics, because mine was the order and reliability. And we did the exercise. It was definitely that I have an alcoholic father who didn't grow up and, goofed off all the time and low rent housing. And, so I just needed parents is what I needed. And is there a deeper level that I'm missing?
Well, what is the, if you just take a moment and drop in your heart and your breath, what is that need? That thing you needed more of, what needed most from you, what I wanted most from you, but just didn't get enough of.
Well, because to the structure, like safety.
Yeah.
Because there was the uncertainty that I never knew what was going to happen.
Yeah. So safety. And so, you could look at it from the unmet need perspective, and then you can also look at it from, from the shadow perspective. And that is, in what way did that, what was your reaction to that? How did you respond to that as a child? What did you believe about yourself and reality based on the fact that you weren't given safety? Most people have a belief that life isn't safe and I'm not trustworthy. That could be a common one. I'm not saying it's for you, but that's a common one, because if they didn't receive the safety, someone didn't receive the safety, it could be like, well, then I'm not trustable or I'm not worthy. Right. And so for you, then, if you look at what that points to, then you could say, for example, well, let's, you want to work it for a minute rather than doing hypotheticals?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm willing to.
So what was your response to that?
Well, there's like an independence and taking care of myself and them taking care of them so that I could feel safe. But I think under that is unworthiness.
So did you say it became a habit for you to please them and take care of them? Is that
Yes, pleasing is
okay?
that, but it was,
Right.
like if they're not going to do it, well, then I'm going to do it and step up. And that they
Right.
didn't fight me for it. They like agreed, like, okay, sure, you'll take care of my needs then.
So then we could call that your pleaser shadow.
Okay, please or
So
sure.
so the repressed aspect of yourself, or the unseen, repressed, unhealed, unresolved aspect of yourself, is this part that, if we use that metaphor, if we're born as whole, loving, shiny, expressive, healed, full whole beings, by you being met with this lack of presence, lack of loving, lack of safety, you put your safety away in the bag and you had a protection mechanism come up. And your protection mechanism is to please in order to feel safe. And so your freedom shadow, we'll make an example, your shadow of feeling free then is now in the bag and it's no longer expressed. You don't feel free to just be yourself and let the chips fall where they may, because you need to manipulate and mold and control situations and please in order for you to feel safe, thinking that the other feels safe, right? I'm kind of psychologicalizing a little bit, but so there's a couple ways I like to look at it. You could look at the shadow as a negative piece, or you could look at the shadow from using a positive language, like, your make everyone feel happy shadow. It sounds nice, but in a way, it's a shadow aspect of yourself that doesn't have you expressing in your natural, authentic state, right? What do people say that they want more than anything? It's just to be their authentic selves. So if you were to just be your authentic self, you wouldn't have to go and please and make everyone like placate and everyone's good, everyone feels okay, right? And so for you, how does that play out in a relationship for you?
Okay, so like with my husband specific,
Yeah,
or
yeah, with
easier
your
with my
intimate partner.
easier with my parents, but if you're wanting this with intimacy and connection, that it would be accommodating his schedule and asking him what he wants to do today, as opposed to me saying what I want to do.
Right. So that could be very simply one aspect that your shadow has influence over is you accessing your deep desire, your own desires. Right. So we can look at if our shadow aspects or our shadow wounds or our unmet needs are the filters through how we see the world. When you look at your husband or look at anyone, and we all have them, the filter we see is, I dare not access my desires. I want to make sure that everyone's happy. And so you see that everywhere, and you act out in that, maybe not in every situation, but that's the filter through how you see the world and you act accordingly. And so then, for you, what might be helpful or beneficial, if you haven't already done this, is, to do some work around desire. What is your desire and what brings you pleasure? Very common in women's work. There's a lot of work around pleasure, right? Because one of the traits of the feminine is feeling, sensitivity, pleasure. And so that could be a really powerful exercise for you, is to do some work around what is my deepest desire. And so the next time you find yourself wanting to go ask your husband, what do you want? You drop into your own desire body, and you're able to express that, hopefully in a way that he can really receive it. So that's kind of a simplistic way of looking at our unmet needs and kind of intersecting with our shadow and how that has us playing out our habitual nervous system patterns. Yeah.
Okay, sounds true. Sounds nice
So
and encapsulated.
so
Yeah.
so what is so I'll in the spirit of my coaching habit here, what stretch would you like to make around expressing your needs more and your desires?
I was still in like going for the tapping into my desires and figuring out what they were and going, okay, I'm on the right path. I will keep
Okay.
figuring that out. So like, I don't know that I'm ready yet to like.
No, that's a great stretch. Do just do 2 weeks of desire work, meditation, journaling.
I'm currently reading Open to Desire by Mark
You're
Epstein.
kidding.
So so that was like, okay, I'm on the right path. I'll keep going with this. Okay.
That's amazing. Okay. Congratulations. You're on the right path. Yeah, that's great.
Thank you so much, Kelly. It's always awesome when you jump in. That's great. Thanks for adding to thanks for being part of the party. All right, good stuff. And you know that book, the Epstein book, Zat?
What, can you repeat it? I didn't hear it.
Kelly, what's the book called?
Open to Desire by, I think, Mark Epstein, who's a psychologist Buddhist. And so he's making the link because like the Four Noble Truths for Buddhism is not really, desire is suppressed in Buddhism.
That's
And
right.
so it's the way of finding like the tantric Buddhist, which is not what my tradition has been.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for that suggestion.
And this is so relatable, I think. You know, so often we see folks come out of, you know, powerful psychedelic journey and get tapped into desires or needs that they had repressed for so long. And, you know, it can almost be tricky because sometimes they come back with a vengeance. You know, it's like a little bit of, you know, and I know sometimes people want to almost do something unsustainable to meet the need or meet the desire instead of feeling into it more fully. You know, I feel like I really appreciate what Kelly said about, I'm gonna sit with it a little bit more, because we can have such a knee-jerk reaction to kind of like meet the need or get the job done or like move into action, that we don't kind of like savor the need. We don't savor the desire.
Yeah, that's a
And
great
that's maybe
distinction.
that might even be like a cultural shadow.
That's a great distinction, Daniel. With my first teacher, he put me with a practice partner. Like he would put people in couples, right? And she lived in Europe. I lived in the States, and we developed this, you know, this deep love just on the phone. And you know, he like kind of kept us apart. He said, no, you can't see each other until like your love really develops. But this desire got so activated in me. And I remember just the longing got so strong, you know, and I remember him saying, just, you know, you'll go see her in 6 months. I was like, 6 months? No, that's crazy. I do not want to wait that long. And he would pull me in. He was this big dude, and he'd go like, just savor the desire, dude. Just savor the desire. So I literally had to just, you know, what's the word? Marinate in that desire. But, you know, it took on a different context because I was given this practice to actually be in the depths of that desire, not from a place of like grasping, but really from a place of longing.
Of longing, which brings us, you know, that's how the gopis related to Krishna.
Right.
Most of the time is, you know, that the bhakti yogis really codified, you know, they really codified that the idea that the longing is sacred, that's
Like Rumi says, the longing is the answer. The longing is, you want to know God, the longing is the cure. The longing is the way. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm glad we got that out of the way. I'm glad we covered that. So meeting the shadow. So we're starting to kind of meet these shadow needs, right? These shadow desires, these shadow longings. What is it like to what happens when if we personify these, if we embody these? a lot of times, IFS is very popular these days and
Yeah.
things like that. Everybody's part's crazy,
They sure
feeding
are.
feeding your demons and stuff. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be. I like it too.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, if you have an approach to the personification and relating with the shadow as an entity of sorts.
Well, I like to go to the alchemical motto, the alchemical motto, solve et coagula, right? Dissolve and integrate.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is the basic idea and alchemy of taking base metals and boiling them, dissolving them, and just taking the pieces out that are, usable, and then transforming those into, precious metals. And we see that in nature. We see that in nature and the seasons and leaves falling and decomposing. We see that in the water cycle, water evaporating, and fire ecology. Fire's clear, frap out from the forest. And even in yajna ceremonies in Vedic tradition, right? You do fire ceremonies where you're taking rice and you're putting your toxic, unhealthy, karmic aspects in the rice and you throw it in the fire so the fire can purify. So we're constantly doing that. And then that's really what the integration aspect of is the integration aspect is dissolving. And even moon rituals and in Celtic tradition, releasing that which no longer serves us, right? So releasing it. And on a practical level, the way I like to look at it and how I was taught was around digesting and dissolving our rigidities. From the Buddhist perspective, dissolving our fixed mind. Our fixed mind, of course, is based on unmet needs, shadows, programs, conditions, beliefs, all those pieces, karmic pieces, epigenetic pieces, right? And so it's this constant work of dissolving, releasing, digesting. For me, I love the idea of digesting. That comes through the tradition of Swami Rudrananda, who was one of my root teachers, not in the living form, but he was in our school, which
Spiritual cannibalism, baby.
It's my all-time book, man. It's my number one.
It's good.
And so all about the psychic mechanism and digesting those aspects of ourself. And so that is the process of shadow integration. And so we just look at the standard integrative process. First would be getting to know your shadow, right? Getting to know what it is. And so in the kind of standard Ken Wilber process, you talk to your shadow. You talk about your shadow. I'm sorry. You just kind of let it flow. You open the floodgates. Every aspect of how you think your shadow affects you, how it makes you think, how it makes you feel, what it makes you do in relationship, in your sex life, every aspect. You just talk all about how shadow affects you. The second piece is you talk to your shadow. So you take on that role and you can set up different, containers in our retreats and things. We do this, talking directly to shadow, which is done in a really safe way, right? This is always done in a really safe way to get the most integration, has to be done in a safe way. So talking about your shadow, talking to your shadow, and then letting your shadow speak to you. And then the last piece would be some kind of embodiment aspect of letting it really inhabit you in a safe way, because embodiment is that letting the being fully in, letting it become part of you, consciously aware of it being inside of you and all around you, and letting yourself be an embodied expression of your shadow. Kind of like how a character actor would take on a role, right? If they were taking on a role of a gladiator, they might go to boxing matches, they might go to boxing gyms and take that on completely to embody it. And then kind of the final step is the integration part, is to bring loving acceptance, forgiveness, consciously embracing and really consciously integrating, saying, okay, you are part of my being, you're part of my human Earth School curriculum, part of my human experience, and I fully accept you. And in doing that, for me, how that has been powerful is that in moments when I am reactive, upset, triggered, judging my wife, judging my kid, judging life or reality, I can kind of look over my shoulder and go, okay, I hear you, right? Like, oh, you think I'm an asshole, or you think I'm acting like an idiot, or okay, I hear you, shadow, and like enter into this relationship so that it's, kind of like taking off the glasses, like you're not just at the effect of your shadow anymore. You're not just at the effect of its total power over you. And that is not an easy battle. That is not an easy place to get to. It's not like you do one shadow workshop and you're done. Like this is many, multiple repeat. It's like meditation. It's over and over and over. That integration happens, and you soften and you soften and you integrate. And I mean, I can tell you, unless I'm talking too much, tell me to shut up, Daniel.
Well, I mean, I just was gonna say you don't have to just do it once. You have to do it once every time your wife tells you forgot to do the thing.
Yeah.
But go on. No, I'm loving it.
I had an experience last year where I got ringing in my ears, right? Tinnitus or tinnitus, and it caused this major anxiety. It triggered the kind of core, whether it was mine, my family's, my lineage, whether it was, some lack of safety, shadow piece of my life. But, for me, it was just this absolute glaring, once again, example of if you think you've landed somewhere, life will show you there's another place to go before you land again and you land again. And so that was a big shadow piece to integrate, that whole anxious aspect of myself, that really deep, not feeling safe in reality aspect of myself, which I've worked, but this was just a whole new level. And life has a way of showing us those things, right?
Yeah, it could have, like what you're saying is it could have been any, it's not about the ringing in the ears.
Right.
It's about the response.
Yeah.
There's some people who say that that's just Shiva's drum.
Okay, I'm down with that. Or
The ringing in the ears
Krishna's
is
cartel or something.
yeah, there's a whole list of them, like buzzing of bees, thunder in the distance, like of all this like nada yoga practices on ear sounds.
Okay.
It's interesting stuff.
It is.
So the shadow work, as we were saying, is something we have to deal with every day, especially if, how did you phrase it? We've attracted
Our reciprocal.
we've attracted, which is a nice way of saying the person who's going to trigger us more than anybody else.
That's
Right.
right.
So let's look at some of that, perhaps. Like, well, let's get to this kind of intimacy. We've done a little bit of like the self, right? But we're doing this also in relationship, if not to an intimate partner, to the world. But yeah,
Well, first
like
you got to take the red pill, right?
I've got one around here somewhere.
You got to take the pill, and you got to wake up in the slimy, gook where the machines are. You have to wake up to reality first. If you can't do that, a lot of guys I see, men and women, come into the work and they're always looking for tools, ways to be, more relationally skillful, communication tools and devices, which are helpful and they're useful, but you got to take the pill first. You have to awaken to these aspects of yourself that are running the show. So,
Or I was talking to an African shaman a week or two ago. I had the honor of being able to interview him, and he was saying, you start to do this work and you meet the ancestors, and the first thing the ancestors do is show you how repulsive you are. And that's not a word that like an American would use in polite American society, but it's a different thing. He was like, no, we're repulsive to others and to ourselves, and got to clean that up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the red pill.
Red pill, waking up to these aspects of ourselves. through various methods, self-inquiry, through doing shadow work, repeated over and over, until you can really get a grasp on using shadow work really as an effective practice, right? And so, like I gave you that very simple example of how I'll use a daily practice of when my mind becomes activated and I go into fear or shame or disconnection or limitation. I recognize that shadow aspect of myself and I relate to it. Like I'll say, okay, thank you. I hear you're sharing with me. There's something to be seen here, because obviously this is there's gold in there, right? There's not only shadow, there's gold. So the whole idea of shadow work is really, it should be called shadow and gold work, because through shadow work, there is always some gold. There's some treasure that you can take out of it. If it is being a better relational being, being better in intimacy, being better in your sexual life, being better in your parenting, whatever better means to you, and also awakening more deeply to, if you're on the evolutionary path of awakening, you are becoming slowly more and more awakened to the ultimate reality, which is you are an infinite being, right? And as we are less hooked in to those shadow wounds, we remove the hooks from ourselves, then we're able to relate more to what is, right? This is kind of the tantric idea of relating to what is rather than relating to concept. Relating to what is like, okay, right now I'm pissed off. This is happening in my life. I didn't get invited to the party. I'm pissed off. I'm angry. I'm relating to what is in the moment right now. This feels like shit. Oh, shit, this feels like shit. Oh, I feel shame in my body. Oh, I feel anger. Like that's relating to what is. Not relating to what is going into all kinds of stories about it, thinking about all the ways that you've invited your other friends and all the things you've done for them and how dare they, and then you go in this whole spiral. You're not relating to what is, you're relating to your shadow dialogue. You're relating to your shadow that is, again, you're at the effect of your shadow, you're at the effect of your story, you're at the effect of your wound, trauma, conditioning. And so through this self-inquiry, through this shadow and gold process, you gain some agency and some skillfulness, and you can use that, of course, in conjunction with all kinds of relational tools,
Well, being that, I said one of those old deep needs is freedom. When I hear you say that and I think about the dissolving that you were talking about, I just think about like all of like the energy and bandwidth that is now free.
Yeah.
Like if I have all of this energy wrapped up in hating all of these people who have done all of these perceived wrongs, and I'm all wrapped up in, and then having all this tension in my body around it, that if I let go of that, maybe I learn something or maybe I don't, but at least like there's just more flow.
Yeah, there's a lot of energy tied up in projecting your issues on other people. I mean, how many people judge someone today? Raise your hand. I mean, I did. I judged someone today. And it's not
Was it
like
me?
it was. I'll just be honest. It was.
I deserve it.
And it's not as though there's some like magic number. I only judged one person in the past week. I'm doing pretty good. There's not some magic number to get to, but God, how wonderful would it be to get to a place where our tensions, our shadows are so integrated that when we see that person that is the outer reflection of the thing that we're wounded about, anger, shame, lack of safety, that we no longer are in opposition to them, that actually what gets triggered in that moment is just pure compassion and empathy. Like, wow, they're really hurting. Wow, and you can see that, see through the veil, right? And that's what, if we look at what, like an Amma or like an awakened being can do, is they can see through our karmas and our habituations and just see into our true nature, our beauty, our love. And so that's that's,
They just want to help clear that stuff out of the way.
yeah, I mean, that's what I want for myself, is just how can I live more with an open heart?
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, we're going to have to go through lots and lots of processing of those wounds, those tensions, those unmet needs that make us, you know, become so reactive and so emotional.
Yeah.
And so if we're looking, and then the other area I like to bring in is, you know, around relational dynamics. And for some people, it can be really helpful. I don't know if we have time to necessarily go there today, but actually, I think an even more potent place to go would be what's so amazing and beautiful about shadow work is for people that are willing to touch into these darker aspects of themselves, right? If we look at traditional Western life and how Western life is influenced by the church and things that are dark or evil, right? Things that are sexuality might be considered, you know, things that are on the dark spectrum. We're told to keep away from those, and we're told to stay in the light spectrum. You know, life is around positivity and love, and you know, we see this in spiritual communities. I'm sure you can relate to what I'm talking about, is hyper spiritualizing and spiritual bypassing. And so when we are able to touch into the taboo, into the darker realms, and so I'll do this work with people, touching into those darker aspects of our emotional range. If we look at our emotions, we might say there's a spectrum from the dark to the light. At the very darkest end of that spectrum, we might say is like this inner killer, right? This real dark aspect of our being, which some of us might have even tapped into. If you had a loved one that was ever endangered, you go into killer mode, like you go into the dark realm, like you become a vicious, like, protector, and you're willing to do whatever. And then people who tend to be, and you know, we've seen this throughout the years, especially in spiritual communities and teaching at spiritual festivals, that people just want to remain in the light, in the loving, in the positivity. And so there's such power in being able to navigate this full range of emotions, from the very darkest aspects to the very light. And having that full range really gives us more mastery over in our relational life, because I can ask this: how many women here, or feminine beings, we might say, can relate to this idea of feeling a turn on when a man is in kind of his dark mode, in his, maybe his, like, his badass biker mode, like in that archetype. Like there's something sexy about that, right? What's that, the whole idea of women are attracted, or the feminine's attracted by the bad boy, that dangerous kind of energetic. And because that signals something in the feminine body around that person, that man, has access to a ferocity, whether you can trace that back to, like, you know, being a protector, or for whatever reason that is activating, there is that sexual aspect, right? Sex and violence, or sex and protector. And so I'll just finish up this piece in saying that if someone's willing to access those darker energies in themselves and play in those in a safe and you know, in a right way, it gives you more access to express the fullness of your being and your humanity, rather than always remaining in this very, very, very narrow bandwidth. I don't know how many of you can relate this idea of just really having kind of a very narrow bandwidth of your emotional life, how you normally just relate in kind of one emotional way. And so being able to widen that range is just a really, I've just found such freedom in it. And I've seen men become so extremely liberated by being able to access this wide range of emotional expression.
Yeah, I feel like you're making me think of, like, there's activities, everything from karaoke to paintball to those. I think there's rooms in New Jersey where you can just go and smash televisions,
Yeah.
like all of these kinds of things. And then, you know, you know, I know that there's very conscious spiritual kink communities out there doing things like this as well.
That's a big part of that.
Yeah.
Desire, accessing the taboo or being willing to touch into the taboo, because we live such a limited life, right? In our expression and what's considered okay to talk about, what's okay to do. And so, if you think about taking on a practice, for people that maybe tend to be more pleaser, more soft, more not wanting to rock the boat, going and taking a kickboxing or a boxing class,
Right.
or going to one of those, demolition places would be an
Yeah.
amazing practice, a way to shift how we habitually respond.
Yeah. And again, we're seeing, from a somatic perspective, you're moving your body in new ways. Like you're allowing yourself to express yourself in shapes and movements that are frozen. Like, oh, I can't do that. And it's like, oh, you can. And what does that do for the system to literally find that freedom through the body? Sounds super healing.
Yeah, I think that dancers definitely have that freedom down. People who have that natural embodied expression. But then people who have that natural embodied expression of movement may be really lacking more of that structured linear way of being, right?
Well, what was interesting, I had a student who was a professional dancer for a while, and like ballet, or I think this may be something similar to Cirque du Soleil. And she had blown past all of her body's boundaries in the pursuit of shapes, in the pursuit of being able to do things with her body that were required of her. And so part of our work together on the mat in yoga practice was for her to find to stop at the slightest edge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, her shadow was it was this whole performance thing, and not, talking about not meeting your own needs or listening to your own desires or listening to your body's needs and desires. And so just increasing her delicacy, her slowness, and her attention was really powerful for her. It was like the opposite of punching through a wall.
Yeah, I love that. That's really good. And it's I think it's a very Western thing. I think it's a very American thing that, we're overdoers, right? Overworkers. That whole, you can bring up the idea of work shadow. How many can relate to the idea of having a work shadow, of that consistent need to achieve and to reach goals? And so we push. And so I like that, what you're talking about.
Have you seen, there's a really spooky show, it was on Apple TV, called Severance.
Yes.
They actually create they sever part of your brain, and then you go downstairs and you do work, and you don't know what you're doing down there. And the part of you that's downstairs has no idea who the real you is.
Out in the outer life.
The outer life. And there's
they sever your personality, right? And so when you go out, you go home, and you don't know what you do. You don't know what you do at work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really spooky. It's a really spooky show.
I'm telling you, Parts it's really popular. It's a whole TV show about it.
Yeah. And what was really terrifying is that the person would wake up there and be like, I don't like this. This is scary. This sucks. I'm leaving. And then they would leave. And then the upstairs version of them was like, why aren't I at work? I got to go back down. And so they would just wake up. They would run out the door and then wake up coming back in the door.
Yeah, that was
like
wild.
It was just it was like a loop, an endless loop of them trying to leave and just finding themselves back, because their upstairs part had no idea that anything was wrong, that they were torturing themselves. We have no idea that we're torturing ourselves.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
I think it's worth watching. It's pretty provocative.
Yeah. Yeah, you could probably get it if you were motivated. You could probably get it done in your free trial period.
So where are we going now in the shadow world?
We are going to ask our friends, we've been going for about an hour, a solid hour. We're going to ask our friends if they have any questions, I think. Or concerns, or maybe things that they want to work on.
Yeah. Great.
And maybe they're shy.
Who is the brave soul? Could be a real life challenge in relationship. Oh, someone.
I'm just pulling over again in Australia. And I have one question is, when you're talking about the masculine here, is it similar or the same or not the same to apply that to the animals of women? Like my animals, when you're talking about the masculine, I hear that for me personally as my animus. Would that be appropriate?
Well, there's,
Do you know what I mean?
I mean, yes, and in essence, yeah. So when we're talking about the masculine, I don't use animus or animus personally, because there is from the way I teach about it, there's some difference there. But we talk about masculine qualities and traits and feminine qualities and traits, and the only reason I use those.
So I drop the
Tracy, you're breaking up a lot. Can you walk to maybe a different part of the house or something?
Yeah, I couldn't hear you.
I think we let Tracy, I don't think your connection is good enough. Maybe
Sorry.
if you
Sorry.
find a spot later, we'll come back to you. But Jen has their hand raised.
I'm on a freeway.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
It's
we'll check back.
okay. Yes.
I've got something. Hi, thank you for all
Hi.
your wisdom and knowledge. So I recently did a ceremony where I was really taken to the two depths between God and the devil. And I can see how the fear between love and the lack of love, like fear just really is such a big shadow for me, and it just keeps on coming up. And I have been being aware of it and like kind of seeing it like play out in my life. But I just find that at the moment, it's almost like coming at me so strong. Like maybe is it because I've had an awareness of it that I can see that it's constantly coming up all the time for me, to the point that it's kind of the shadow side of thing is kind of getting kind of overwhelming, where it's like I'm like looking at it, accepting it, asking kind of what it needs. But there's also just the point where it's kind of just, it feels like at the moment it's railroading me.
Could you share a little bit more and be more specific on what the actual challenge that you're facing around that is? Could you rephrase that one more time for me?
Yeah, so I think like at the moment I just like I'm a bit stuck in my life, probably in like relationships and work, and there's just this fear element that says this constant doubt and confusion, and it's just like I'm fearful of everything.
Okay.
So yeah.
You have a lot of fear present in your life right now in general, and then also in your relational life and in work. Is that right?
Yeah, like my life is pretty easy breezy good, and that's the funny thing, but I can just feel this like deep sense of fear that stops me from doing things, even though like my life is generally good. But it's almost like the emotion of the fear is like bubbling to such a extreme top that I can feel the two polarities so like intensely when I'm just like meditating, looking at a tree, feeling peaceful. And then there's a sudden aspect of fear that's like, oh, there's something wrong. What is wrong? We're gonna end up
I
bankrupt. Or,
see.
yeah.
So on one hand, you have this easy breezy, you have this sense of like gratitude and there's beauty and there's good things happening.
Yes.
And then also maybe simultaneously in that moment, you might get a big kind of flood of fear and anxiety may come up in you where you start doubting
Yeah, and it's
things. Just tell me a little bit more about that.
yeah, it's almost like the higher I kind of like surrender to like the universe, God, creations, the flip side of the fear is like coming at me just as strong. So there's like a part of me where I'm like following my heart, I'm giving everyone love, and then on the flip side, it's like sometimes I go even like walk down the street and then suddenly there'll be like a really negative, fearful emotion that just comes out of nowhere and just like railroads me. And so it's like it feels like such a strong polarization where it's like there's a part of me that's like very like trying to being aware and like trying to, maybe I'm trying too much to be this light loving being and I just need the fear to bowl me over.
Yeah, and so I'm just wondering, from a shadow work perspective, if you were to sort of look at this fear arising that's happening, and it's, I mean, what you're sharing is very common. The more awake and the more liberated we become in our relationship to ourself, to the universe, to God, whatever you want to call it, inevitably there's going to be more that needs to be uncovered, transformed, healed, looked at. I mean, that is the path. You can't just hope for having this sublime, beautiful, positive relationship with the universe and life and only having that, right? And so I can tell you countless stories of that happening for people over the years I've worked with and in my own path, I can remember one of the first retreats I went to where I was blown open to connection to the spirit of love. And then in that same retreat, just having the most darkest, kind of radical fears arising. And so that's not an uncommon, that I feel like that is the path. It sounds like that is your awakening path. So in one way, like, congratulations.
Thanks.
And then and then how do you become more skillful in working with those fears as they, I mean, I know Daniel, that's what Daniel does, and working with people through medicine work to help them to move through that kind of those kind of fearful parts of our life. And of course, depends on where you're at in your journey and your age. I mean, I'm very clear that I went through a second Saturn return. Like, if you know anything about astrology, it was very, very intense. And Sufis talk about going in our 30s, our late 30s, going through what's called the tunnel of madness, where it's like kind of, a way more deep mystic version of breakdown or breakthrough. And you have to move through that tunnel, which is like facing your deepest fears. And so you can approach it from a shadow work perspective and look at, okay, in your life, if you look back at when fears have arisen in your life, what's been your response? What's been your habitual go-to response when fear comes up? How do you respond? How do you act in relationships and to people? You can kind of look back and trace it back to, yes, this is my shadow aspect of blankety blank. You can look back and trace it back to some wound or some trauma or some unmet need, and look at it from the perspective of shadow integration. That's one way you can work with it. If you're doing some kind of somatic therapy, I mean, there's a million ways you can look at it, right? I mean, you might need to do a parasite cleanse. Parasites are known to cause great anxiety in people. I mean, there's so many different ways to look at it, but since we're talking about shadow today, I think, and have you engaged in shadow work? Have you entered into that?
Yeah, yes, I have. And I think that, yeah, sometimes, yeah, I think it's funny that you said the parasite cleanse because that's been on my mind. So it's funny that you brought that up.
Reality. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think actually I probably, these shadows have come up and I probably need to dive deeper into like actually doing shadow work as like on these specific elements. Probably because previously I always kind of play in the light rather than like allowing to go down into these deep, darker side of the shadows, really. And I think like sometimes I'm a bit sick of them. Like it's like I've been doing this work
Totally.
so long that
I
I'm
get
like,
it.
oh God damn it. Like, why is this here? Can I just, like, see it, acknowledge it, and then give love to people? And then the shadow's just like, no, I want to be seen. It's like,
Yeah,
oh,
well, you make one good point I just want to comment on, and that does, shadow work oftentimes, I've seen over the past 30 years where people really get into this whole wound worship kind of mentality, right? Where they're
mm,
constantly worshiping the wound, talking about the wound, looking at the wound, looking at the trauma. What's the wound behind that? How do I heal the wound? It's like, shut up, right? So there is that part, but you know, I got to a place where I'd done intensive shadow work nonstop for 9 years. And then I had to say, okay, it's time to set that aside and work in some other realms, more subtle realms of energy. Because shadow work's very gross work, right? Not gross as in ew gross, but as in very gross, tangible. It's very, somatic work. So I think it just takes a little bit of internal wisdom to know, like, you know what? Intuitively, I'm feeling like I've been really doing intensive work on my shadow aspect, my wound aspect. When we're talking about shadow work, we're really talking about wound work. We're really talking about wound trauma work. Um, and if you know that you have, then maybe you back off a little bit. Or if you know, like, you know what? I think it just feels really uncomfortable for me and I'd rather not do it, but I know I need to do it. So just
mhm.
intuitively feeling like, is it time to continue in doing that work and go a little bit deeper? Not from a place of grasping and overly intense obsession, but from a place of like, okay, fear's coming up over and over. What is this fear shadow about? What is it showing me? I got to really look at this and understand it and be in relationship with it. Because if you don't, and you just try to find ways around it, you kind of get stuck in it. You kind of
Yeah.
get, it doesn't really, it's asking for something. That shadow piece is asking to be seen. It's revealing something, just like our emotions are our guidance system. They're pointing to something and it's showing you something. And so if you can honor that and say, okay, you're fucking showing me something. I don't want it, but okay, let's go. Let's go look at it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. You gave me so many good pearls of
I
wisdom.
hope so. Yeah,
Can I
totally.
ask one quick question? So,
Yeah.
what would you recommend as like first, like practical ways or tools to dive into shadow work if you are just like us here now, like maybe to a book or anything, or
Yeah, I mean, there's countless books on it. I mean, I always loved Robert Augustus Masters' book on shadow. That's probably one of the best. Um, I love this one. It's a little bit older, but it's fantastic. Meeting the Shadow by Connie Zwig and Jeremiah Abrams. That's got a lot of different teachers in there. That's a great one. But, um, I'm a strong proponent for having someone to work with doing shadow work. I don't know if Daniel does shadow work, but I definitely do. I work with people doing that. And I think at the very least, you can start to enter into relationship with some shadow aspects. Very simple work, sitting at your meditation altar with your journal and starting to have some dialogue with that shadow piece. Like, wow, okay, that guy Zat was talking about my fear shadow. All right, let's see what the hell is in here. Yeah, I was walking down the street yesterday and I saw so and so, and that really I did not want to see. And like, just let it start flowing out. Let the fear conversation, and then you can even say, "Fear, what are you trying to show me here?" And then let fear talk for a minute. Okay, I'm here. I'm fear now, and yeah, I'm trying to tell you, be the fuck careful because you're not trustable. Like whatever it is, right? And you can
Mhm.
just start with some basic self-processing through some journaling work, but definitely working with someone who's skilled in that work it's going to speed up the process a lot than trying to go it alone. That's my
Amazing.
thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah,
appreciate
you're
it.
so welcome. Daniel, you have any thoughts on that?
Well, my only thought around finding someone to work with is I've worked with, I mean, I've worked with some amazing people over the years, but I've also occasionally come up against therapists or practitioners who how do you say it, like can't hold the shadow, that
Right.
you're encouraged to be vulnerable and let it loose and let it out, and then you do, and then they're scared or they're repulsed or they're mirroring back that you shouldn't have done that or that's unacceptable. So whether or not somebody is necessarily skilled in this technique or that technique, is like looking for somebody who's just gonna love you through it,
Mm,
is like that's who you want,
mm. Yeah,
in my
beautiful.
humble opinion.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Zat?
Yeah, yeah. I think that that makes all the difference in all the work that we do. If
Yeah.
someone really has that deep capacity to hold in that. And the only way someone's going to be able to do that is if they've done it themselves. And
Yeah.
so finding a practitioner that has done that consistently. And, I mean, for me, when I do that, I always make sure I go to someone extremely experienced. And it's usually a little bit, someone who has some gray. Oh, someone's got a little bit of gray in the mix there, who's been on the mat enough
Ageist.
times.
No, please continue. I'm sorry. I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
no, I'm just someone who's done the work. And
Mhm.
and that's what I look for, is someone who has that depth of experience in their own, and someone who's willing to be vulnerable and be real about their own shit, their own shortcomings, and not just psychologicalizing. Is that a word? Yeah. I'm happy to talk to you more about it if you want to reach out. Or I'm sure Daniel can guide you to someone as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I will.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Jen. Is
Hi, Adam.
Adam has his hand raised, or Philip has his hand
I was
raised?
just saying hi to Adam and Sarah.
Oh, hey, Adam and Sarah. I'm going to bring up Philip or Philippe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, I mean, it's a great talk. Thanks about defining shadows. I've done a lot of shadow work as well. And I'm going to use the I statement because I cannot think for anybody else. But I found out through deep work that shadows, even the darkest one, are all protectors.
Hmm.
Everything we do is to protect ourselves. Every facet of us, every facet of me that shows up when it needs to show up is a protector.
That's right.
Even my most violent ones, which came out when I was 15, 16 years old. Upon reflection, they all came out as being, yeah, I did that because I was protecting you. So I think that one important point to me is no one should be afraid of their shadows, because once you talk with them, you'll find out that they were there to protect you at some point. That's why they're there. And they protected you. And they want to be recognized. They don't want to be seen as bad shapes of you or bad sides of you. But that's the reaction that we have. Without the work, we are afraid of our shadows. We are afraid of our dark thoughts. We are afraid of sometimes the murder thoughts that come when we see something going on. We say, I wish that guy was dead. So being afraid of that is a mistake in my point of view. When we do the work, that fear disappears, and those shadows, those protectors, all want to be loved. They want to reintegrate the whole. They don't want to be seen as, oh, to talk IFS, they don't want to be exiled anymore. They want to be recognized for the value they brought up. So I think, yeah, shadow work is fundamentally extraordinarily important.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. Yeah, that is exactly correct. That is shadow work. That's what we're doing, is integrating those. Like I shared in the in one process that we do, we just bring loving, compassion, forgiveness to however they may have been trying to protect us and have us acting in ways that has caused us suffering, has caused division in our life. So we're integrating those back in a loving, compassionate, empathetic way. So thanks for bringing that up. I agree with you. Yeah. Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's such a load off, I think, when we realize everybody's doing the best they can and that we're part of everybody. I think that that these protectors, these things that are trying to serve us, if we can start to recognize that, oh, I'm doing the best I can at any given moment, that we'd move through life just a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Without that criticism, without the judgment or the guilt or the shame. It's like, might not have been very good, but it's the best I could do.
Daniel, you must be familiar with, I mean, you mentioned feeding your demons, but you must be familiar with chud practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those
Yeah.
that don't know about that, that is one of the radical tantric Buddhist practices where we face our demon, and we the whole work is looking at these internal demons that we carry, and we look at what it is that they want at the root level. What is it that they're really wanting from us? And we ask them, and in the full form of the practice, in the full form of the cha practice, we're actually feeding our demons. We feed them our body, because that by doing so, we're giving them everything, every one of our last, the thing that we cherish most, right? Our body. If we don't have the body, we're not alive. So in this visualization practice, we ask our demon, what is it that you want? And you pacify them. The whole idea is giving to them what they most want so they can feel pacified. Pacified not as in like, they're their little boy, but as in like satiating them. Here, you're really hungry for this. You're really wanting this thing. You're wanting to protect me. You're wanting this thing. Here, let me give this to you. And so actually in the cha practice, in your visualization, you actually chop up your body and you feed it on a platter to your demons.
Yeah.
That's one aspect of the practice, but it really is this, talk about integration. You're feeding your demon, your body, you're in full integration with this aspects of your humanness. It's a pretty,
right. Like all of your senses, all of like the sense organs and things of that nature. And I think it comes down to, at some point, like our ego clinging, right? Like we're feeding, when we talk about shadow, what I'm thinking of is like, I have repressed those things because I need to be seen a certain way, right? Like I want to be like, I'm this person, I'm not that person, I'm this person. And like, just even that idea that is so fixed is like letting them chow down on that thing.
yeah, that kind of relationship to shadow actually is really liberating, right? A little bit of what Philip was talking about. And so
it's I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say to Jen, so what's arising for you is really around just changing your orientation, changing your relationship to what's coming out. And it's not easy. It's not easy to do, but just changing a little bit of your orientation around, okay, I got a lot of fear coming up in a lot of places in my life right now. And just sitting down and being with that and opening to it, like really deeply opening your being, like, okay, what are you showing me? What's being revealed here? And in that, there's a spaciousness that occurs, right? This wide open kind of, this wide open spaciousness that occurs, this, this idea of sky-like awareness, becoming like the sky, or we can think about it like the ocean, like our fears are all these raindrops. So we're making ourselves expansive in that moment, opening deeply to the fear. And maybe in that moment, what may transpire is it activates some deep grief in you, let's say, and all of a sudden tears are pouring out. You're just on the ground on your yoga mat, and just like tears are coming through, and you're surrendered to that. And like, okay, this is coming through me right now, and just letting your precious human emotions just come through you, and without trying to understand them, stop them, psychoanalyze them, find the root cause of them, just being in this relationship with them that's a pretty liberating practice as well.
Yeah, being ready, willing, and able to feel what's real is super huge.
Yeah.
And it is so amazing how well that fear works to kind of keep that stuff at bay, and how well the you were talking about not trying to figure it out, not try to analyze it. You know, everybody loves to talk about why they've got problems. It's like, and if just telling each other why we had problems worked to heal them, we'd all be healed by now.
Right. I mean, and you know, obviously for some people, you know, we need to come in and out of that. Like for someone on the path, maybe new on the path, just doing talk therapy, it's important to ask those questions. And
Yeah.
if you have a lot of trauma trapped in the body, it's going to be hard to just let yourself feel free to let tears come out. You may not have that level of safety in your body.
Right.
And so somatic work, somatic experiencing is a great way to do that too, is just titrating that down, right? You know, that idea of titrating, like you come off of a drug and less and less and less and less amount. And I've really come to a big, you know, big realization some years ago, because I just used to be like, shadow work, yeah, anger, let's do it.
You were intense.
Yeah. But you know, I've learned the subtleties around it, and you don't have to approach it that way at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Little by little. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not always so, you know, it's like sometimes this, sometimes that, and, you know, being willing to, like you said, being willing to like meet the moment with what it's asking for.
Mm-hmm. And it's super helpful to have some reflection back on that.
Mm-hmm. Cool, man. Thank you so much. All right, we maybe have time for one more question. Otherwise, we will just bow deeply to Shri Shri Zat B Elias.
How about this? How about a real life situation that you're in right now? That's always a potent way to bring a question.
Who is in a real life situation right now?
Real life relational situation. That's always a beautiful way to bring a question in. Or we could meditate in silence.
Well, I would love to know, as I kind of go into a little bit of this half meditation, it'd be nice if there was a namaste for the shadow in me, bows to the shadow in you.
Mm-hmm.
All of the kind of gross, unhealed messiness that is flailing around and half
Yes.
screaming.
So here's what we
vows.
do, Daniel. Here's what we do. And I don't remember where the story comes from, but there was a lighthouse keeper who was going from somewhere on the cliffs that he was to his lighthouse. And as he was walking with his lamp, it was an old-fashioned flickering lamp, he had this feeling that there was something like, there was like wolves, maybe it was in somewhere in Ireland, I have this image, or in Scotland or something, and there's these creatures out there, and he was getting really, really freaking terrified. He kept seeing something behind him, and he knew that there was something lurking in the shadows, and he was speeding up, he was walking faster, and at one point he turned around, and then he saw it behind him over here. So he turned around and he saw it behind him over here, and then he finally realized it was just his shadow. Because that light, those old-fashioned lanterns that had that metal thing with the flame projecting back. And so our shadow is always lurking in the shadows. And so maybe that namaste is like this.
Funny, funny.
Bowing behind us, bowing to the shadow.
There was a large battleship driving that I love a good story, and you reminded me of one. There's this large battleship driving, piloting itself through the sea, and it sees, it's got its big light, and it sees a light out in the distance. And they do the semaphore that, like the SOS stuff, and it says, change your course, 25 degrees. We're coming through. And the response is, no, you change your course 25 degrees. And this makes the commander of the ship very angry, and he goes, like, this is the USS Ego, and I am Commander Smith, you change your course. And the response comes, this is Dave, and this is a lighthouse.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it has to do with our topic, but
it's good. I like it.
But we will barrel ourselves into the rocks a couple of times before we learn our lessons, I guess. If we don't pay attention to the light. So it's been a pleasure. I'm really, really glad we got to spend this time together. I hope that we did make you feel welcome enough. So I'm thrilled to be able to spend this time with you.
Can't do it. You can try, but I won't feel welcome.
And then I do hope I get to see you. Maybe our paths will cross while you're on the East Coast.
I hope so.
That would thrill me to no end. I will see if Marshall's has a red carpet.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Thank
We'll
you
roll
so
out
much
the red
for
carpet
having me
for you.
in your community, a beautiful community. Thank you.
Do you want to we sent an email out, like, people know, with a link to you, but do you want to talk a little bit about how you work or where people can find you if they like?
Yeah, right now I have a men's program that I'm doing. It's called the Advanced Men's Group. We have one spot still open. If there's any men in the community that want to enter into a 4-month, really powerful, deep space of inner work and really focusing on manifesting something powerful in your life, whether that's radical shift in your transformational life, in your parenting life, in your work, in your purpose. It's a deep container for 4 months that we use many different influences from, deep relational work, yogic work, nervous system work, the whole gamut of all that I have to bring. And so that's happening. And then I do relationship coaching. That is my main focus, relationship coaching. If someone needs to focus on shadow, then we do shadow. So that's, part of my repertoire, but men or women, I do really focusing on helping you to become a better relational being. And so you can email me, Zat at Men's Wisdom Work, ZAT at Men's Wisdom Work, if you want to have a conversation and see how I could support you in your relational life. Just spell that, Men's Wisdom Rock. Yeah, so And I do have a
Fabulous.
retreat coming up in November. For those that are interested, we'll be going to Mexico for a 6-day intensive retreat of yogic work, and I have some other great teachers, Saul David Ray and Moose Khan will be with us. So that's going to be a men's retreat only in November.
Cool. Right on. Well, thank you so much. And thank you all so much for being here. May you be blessed, and the shadow in me bows to the shadow in you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, man.